Before we begin, if this resonates, please like, subscribe, and share. Portals is devoted to exploring where the future is emerging and how we can consciously co-create the evolution now arising in humanity. Join our gatherings and add your voice to this shared inquiry. Together, we can explore the big questions of our time. Welcome to Portals of Perception and to the Universalis Project, episode 26. Karen Kyriaki, welcome.
Hello, Karen. Hello, Aviv. Great to be with you.
Welcome, Aviv, and welcome, Kyriaki. It's good to be here.
We're actually mid-flight. We recorded episode 25 and made an editorial choice to pause at around 90 minutes and create a separate segment for which will become episode 26. What we attempted to do in episode 25 was to respond in a particular way to the question, where are we in terms of the Universalis project, and where are we and how we got here. And I'm going to pick up the story and do the completion of that and put it in context. If you didn't watch episode 25, and we actually made a decision to release it, and it is accessible, you should go there and watch it before you watch this one. It will put this one in context. And so actually, is there anything you want to say as a bridging from what we've just gone through to this episode? And then I'll bring the slides on this one and work a little bit with slides, please.
Yeah, it was a fascinating experience to witness the way you did a kind of life trace, but from a perspective that is not reminiscing, but rather putting your life as an object that you examine. And it was a bit like enlivening Socrates quote that the unexamined life is not worth living. So in a way of examining it, but also bringing it to the now and in conversation with your now self, and also maybe activating the potency of it and what has propelled your life. So it's a very, very interesting and fascinating process. Thank you for manifesting that.
Thank you, Kyriaki. Thank you. Indeed. Please, Karen.
Yes, so I've always been amazed how whenever we've approached a subject, it's never quite how I think it's going to be. And I remember when in talking about the epoch progression, and we started to open up Violet, and the last thing I expected was you to start talking about the story and narrating a story where you put yourself in the story. And there were different levels of that, but I'm not going to open that up now. But it's more the awareness that this is actually a human endeavor. And when we talk about verification, and in a way, we're putting ourselves under the microscope. And it's so revealing to look at the human story from these different perspectives, from kind of multiple perspectives and different elevated lenses. And I feel that's a little bit a part of where we are today. We're in our quest to understand the human situation and the humanity's story, we're looking at it through a particular framing that you're taking us through.
Indeed. Yeah, thank you, Karen. What it brings up is a potent bridging in what you're offering from the work into the verification system to make the point that the trace we've just gone through in episode 25 in answer to what is the esoteric way of examining one's life is itself a process of validation and verification. So if you don't know what we're talking about, you're going to have to watch episode 18, 19, and 25 and put them together as we approach this episode. If you're a voracious student or integrator, rather, of the Universalis journey. So with that, let me bring up this slide and right, so the Universalis project 26, where are we and what brought us here, which was also the title we've taken to 25. We may actually call them then differently after the fact. But what 25 was mostly about was the Socratic process of examining one's life through the lens of an object that you're looking at. And what I'm now going to trace is what we seeded right at the beginning. So where it goes is to this idea of practices of the examined life. And this episode 25 was one such central practice. So to keep track of the journey and appraise what brought us here, we asked the question, where was I and what was I doing before we embarked on the Universalis project? And the 3 lines of study endeavor that preceded the Universalis work were the study of the human predicaments and its top situations. Number 2, the study of the epoch as it culminates. And number 3, the study of integration. So the study of the epoch as it culminates is something that we have taken to be a central character, a central artifact in the Universalis work, and several of our explorations centered on that. Study of integration, we framed in this last recording as me finding myself at a point where, even though I've had success and was able to pioneer spaces that felt important, I didn't see how they were going to come together. I remember specifically at 2015, 2016, my son, who is now a CEO of his own company, we developed to facilitate the transition from father-son relationship to two adults on a journey. I earlier on brought this experience into our lives, which he agreed to partake in, where we meet weekly and we are coaching each other. So I invited him and coached him how to coach me, and at some point he found his own way, and he kept asking me, so what will you do in 5 years? What will you do in 10 years? Or sometimes that question would be framed, if you are successful in all that you aspire for, what would it look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Which is very much the framing I would ask in people in the business world when I help them develop their leadership journey. And I kept saying that I don't quite see it, how the different aspects of my life can be integrated, because they seem to be going on parallel tracks. And I probably said as much that there will have to be something else outside of me that's beyond my capacity at the moment and beyond what I can see at the moment that will lift me up to a higher form of integration. I probably said something like this in 2014, 2015 in different ways. So I was, at the time, while I'm studying the human predicament and its stop situations and the epoch culmination, I'm prodding with inquiry into the study of integration. I'm looking all around me at people who live a more whole, more integrated life than I felt that I was able to access. And I was making a focused study of the nature of integration. What is integration? What's the anatomy of integration? There's a lot that revealed itself for me on this journey, but that's actually not just pausing here for a moment, because what I'm about to do is I'm about to invite us into a deep dive on the first one, the study of the human predicament and its top situations. But just guided by intuition to pause here for a moment and see if there is anything you'd want to address or offer, just looking at this framing.
Just to say that I'm very interested about integration, and that without this integration, it's like you have a very nice collection of lives, of moments, but unless there is something that integrates all these moments of a life towards a direction or an essence culmination, then they're just like a nice collection in a museum. So integration is very, very important. It's kind of bringing them all together, marrying and opening them up to their potential. So and they are integrated, in fact. That's what I'm thinking, that in fact they are integrated. You just need to see the loop that integrates them. So,
well, the testimony of my experience, the person I'm seeing back 10 years from back, clearly recognizes that he is facing a stop situation, that he, with all that he has been able to achieve and do, cannot yet see a higher order integration emerging in his life. And he clearly realizes that it will have to be a whole other octave of experience and a whole other set of permissions that will involve other people, will involve a project bigger than the nature of what he is involved with at the time, inside of which it's not that he will do integration or he will cause integration, but integration will be caused in him at a higher level. That's the testimony of that person back in 2015. The testimony of that energetic template is that he understands it at a mental level, but he struggles immensely to surrender to it in the fuller sense. and it leads him to a crucible of tremendous tremendous struggle, out of which there is a chain reaction that gives rise to portals and now universalis. So again, this is not, it can come across as self-serving because I'm talking about my experience. People like to talk about their experience. I'm highly aware of that. The object here is, can we look at critical formative moments in our lives, release them from their subjective experience and observe them as an object, and then free them up to be seen through the lens of today, including with unresolved struggles, including with pain, including with inspiration and breakthrough results. So we will get to do a lot more of that concrete work when we get deeper into the soul work and the inner conclave. But today is offering, what we're doing here in the previous episode offers us an inroad into it. Karen, anything from you, please?
Yes, again about integration, it was something that turned up recently in my own experience, was aligning an aspect of it to maturation. And it's like when you're young and you want to be an adult, you can't force yourself to be an adult. And the reason it became a bit live was, having been away for a little while, I came back and there were various threads that I needed to integrate, and I had to kind of elevate into those integrations quite quickly. And it almost, I could see the parallel between how, because we kind of think about integration as being, that is the golden chalice. It's where we're heading. But there's something almost like the bliss or the wonder of separation, where you can be in a domain and be very happy in that domain. It's like you're in the children's pool and the swimming pool, and you're very happy there. But it's separate, and there comes a time when you need to get into enter a domain that is more complex, more challenging, has more threads within it, more potential stop situations, more challenging psychologies, and many other complex issues or complexities. But would we have it any other way? Because this is where we're going. This is, and I'm speaking in a more local situation, if we're talking about entering the spiritual universal aspects of integration, then the complexities, the multiplicities, the challenges are going to be, the permissions will be there, but the challenges will be there. The two always go together.
Well, so the instruction I'm getting from what you're offering is that we will have to do a whole separate episode on the study of integration, a series of episodes, because rightly so, you brought into it maturation. And when we talk about maturation, we'll have to talk about the process of ripening, what actually occurs in ripening, why that is part of maturation, and how and why that is essential for integration. I'm going to hold these horses for another time. Very tempting to follow this horse and go for a ride, but it'll have to wait for another time. Let us now proceed on this one. So, the study of the human predicament and its stop situation. So, I am beginning to codify this in, I mean, it's been all the years in the background, but I'm beginning to codify this in writing. around 2013, 2014. And the nature of it is that I begin to name different scenarios, different cases within the broader human predicament. And I begin to describe or try to be observant forensically, and also assess to what degree is it a stop situation? Is it blocked by 95% or by 75% or by 55%? So there is this kind of, it's not an intellectual conceptualizing process. There is a prodding into it, which would be difficult to simulate now. But what I do want to do is just to offer the naming of what's in the landscape. And should we choose, we can come back and do deep dives on any one of the 7 I'm going to bring on the screen. Some of these have been addressed in some previous conversations. Some been addressed tangentially or squarely in certain chapters of the soul work in Portals into the Soul. So let's begin. The bigger case, the bigger umbrella case of the human predicament and its stop situation is the realization and the recognition of the widening distance between the natural line, the natural as was meant to be line of development, and its evolutionary potential in joining the evolutionary line, and the gravitational pull of the condition line. So that gap, which is in a simplified way depicted here, where increasingly we find that all aspects of human life increasingly accrue a conditioning that distances through the traumas and the pains of the personal, the family, the tribal, the national, the global, the human race trauma and conditioning of pain and subjugation and all that has accumulated in history, where we literally, even new lives that come into the planetary experience, initially emerging on the natural as was meant to be line, permeated and enveloped by the presence of trust as the first plasma that permits a life to experience itself inside the planetary experience, that even that is snatched quite quickly in many, many situations and many, many places. And very early in life, instead of through to the age of youth, and certainly through to at least the puberty threshold, where life ideally would be supported in a safe environment, the majority of young people don't experience it. Some in an extreme way because they are being raised in a war zone, and some because they are simply raised by uninformed, unequipped parents. So, and even if and when they are brought up in a wonderful family, there's so much in the cumulative experience of humanity that create a divergence. And on previous conversations, including with Jeff Vanderkloot, where we traced and described initially the inner conclave, we describe in great detail the weight of the conditioning line. So I'm not going to do a lot more about this, but simply suggest that everything else we're about to review here, the other 6 scenarios, you could view them to be emerging out of this one scenario. So now bringing into it the problem of philosophy. And as I described in the previous episode, in episode 25, right from my own struggle with philosophy, where what I stumbled was that these were largely conceptual abstractions. The recognition here was that the pursuit of philosophy emerged from a certain essence, from a certain propelling core in what being human is and means. That propelling core, that propelling essence, is the pursuit of truth, the pursuit of knowledge, the pursuit of wisdom, and the pursuit of virtue. All these, they represent different aspects of the pursuit of the philosophical inquiry. And there's profound, groundbreaking spaces that have been traveled by extraordinary people throughout the millennia, throughout the 2 millennia, and most definitely in a pronounced way all the way back to the ancient Greeks, and then in the East as well. What I simply offer here is the testimony of my experience, which we now live in the age of the overly conceptual mind and the capacity of the mind to be separated from life. And it took me many years in the epoch inquiry to understand why we needed to develop on the upside the conceptual and the abstractive capacity of the mind. That actually is an asset. But as with anything, that asset has been utilized largely to create the problem of philosophy, where so much of what has been codified actually becomes a barrier to access truth, to access wisdom, and to access the virtuous life. So the problem of philosophy is that it itself, in many ways, became the blockage to what it originally attempted to pursue. Which brings me to the problem of science. Similarly, the search for truth, and we've codified this in several ways, how the search for truth in the way it was taken by shortly after the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, and then the development of the telescope, which we used, telescope and the microscope, that we used to make the point that we decided to privilege the exterior senses and the exterior scopes, microscope and telescope, and sacrifice in the process other ways of knowing, interior ways of knowing, which we sought to bring back and reintegrate when we talked about the fivefold pathways of the natural integrated validation system in episode 18 and 19 of the Universalis project. So that was one way that science has been captured, and it has then been captured by the economic and commercialized pursuit and the profit impulse, and that coupled and followed it being captured by the materialistic, reductionist, physicalist perspective of the universe. So exteriorizing, materialized, physicalist, and profit-based overlays added with the currencies that were taken up in the academic world of instead of the search for truth, the search for honors and financial rewards, which you cannot blame people. These are natural human needs, but diverted science from its core truth. So when I was grappling with this is where I started to assess it. And so in the work of this, you go and see that there are extraordinary philosophers and extraordinary scientists who are propelled by the first principle, but who are operating in a system that has been captured by these secondary and tertiary and so on and so forth impulses that limits and curtails their capacity to pursue the first principle of the domain. And a similar thing obviously arose with the problem of religion. So the institutionalization of religion became apparent in all world religions. And in the trace of world religions, we come to recognize and see that they each emerged out of a unique core essence that the pathfinder of that religious experience found communion with because of their quest. But it's a system that builds around it that then becomes the blockage and the separation from that originating essence. So what we're seeing time and again, a domain is arising to facilitate a core human need sourced by something profound and eternal and perennial, and the domain that's being developed throughout the millennia becomes the very blockage to be able to access the core truth or the core essence or the core impulse that is the originating inspiration of that domain. I don't think I want to now do what I'm tempted to do, which is to do a deep dive of the case in the various religions. And I think that is something we may want to come back to. We addressed tangentially before, but it deserves its own focused inquiry to make that case. Look at Christianity, look at the Jewish tradition, look at the Buddhist tradition, and recognize first recognize the unique essence that originates each of those great arisings. And then ask, well, what is it that brought about a system, both a human organization and institution, and also a system of knowledge that in a way often blocks the access to the core originating essence. I think that deserves its own conversation and will be too ambitious to be approached, and need to be approached with humility and with careful touch, because we would want to first uplift what each of these traditions brought to the world, the great riches and the great beautiful traditions, and there's so much good that each of those brought to the people throughout the generation that follow these traditions and religions, and then forensically examine where it becomes a blockage. And the blockage is not just in the extreme fanatic or dogmatic applications of those religions, even without needing to point at fundamentalist or fanatic or dogmatic applications of the religion. Even in the mainstreaming of the religion, there are blockages. And I am proposing that we come back to it another time, and we leave it at this with this swift run through. So number one, the winding distance, growing distance between the condition line and the natural and the evolutionary permission of life, and then the problem of philosophy, the problem of science, the problem of religion. So now, when I was codifying this, the next two came swiftly together. I might just bring them together and talk about them, although they have nuances. So this is the teacher student problem, and more than anything, the teacher problem, where it became clear that what historically the function of the guru was, got itself arrested, and that we have entered the time of needing to liberate the inner teacher. And that doesn't mean we don't have an important function for teachers and for gurus, they do, but the archetypal nature of their engagement is changing. Rather than being the all-knowing, all-powerful guru, the function is much more to guide people to discover the inner teacher. To do so with humility and not pretend that they have everything. And not to build dependency in the relationship both ways, which was part of the historic problem. So, and couple that one with the leadership problem, where again, the end of the all-powerful egoic leader as a vehicle of development and evolution has reached. And it's curious that I'm saying this exactly in a period of time where we see some on the world stage large, all-powerful egoic leaders as vehicles for their own development and as sometimes vehicles of breaking down part of the system. And I would say that that's not a proof point that this is not a stock situation. It actually is a validation. And again, we could go specific and name names, but it's not actually the object of this trace. What I want to do with these two is bring a diagram we used very early in one of the earliest Portals conversations, when we worked on the idea of essence art and essence transference through art. And what we attempted to show there was to make a distinction between personal egotistical art to true essence art. And this is also paralleling the much more detailed and nuanced story we're telling in the teacher's journey, where we also describe the golden shadow. And this appears both in a recorded format and also in a written format. And what we're seeing here is that in this case, the artist, because of her feeling or his feeling, intentions, reasons, propulsions, motivations, they enter a quest, a communion to express, a quest to express something, to find communion with some truth, with some motivating, energetic presence. And it is that which gives rise to the art form, the structure, the style of the art. Now, in actuality, these three octaves concurrently are in process. He or she develops their art, develops their skill, all while they are in search to discover what it is that they're actually trying to communicate. And to the degree that they're able to connect to something bigger than themselves or finer than themselves, or maybe finer or bigger or higher are not the right terminologies here, but a source, shall we say, that inspires them beyond themselves, then that art form becomes an essence art. And so therefore the patron, the audience, the fans, the people that follow the artist, they get to experience the presence or the essence that motivated the art. That original essence that the artist made contact with through the medium of the art is able to transfer to the person seeking to make contact. And the importance here is in actually seeing that those are separate octaves. When you take that framing to the teacher and the leader stop situation, I just changed the color so we notice that it's a different diagram. Well, once again, the teacher, the leader, his or her sentiments, reasons, and purpose is what leads them to make contact with a certain truth, a certain motivating energetic presence. And the teaching and the leading process and function, well, they afford the student or the follower the experience of the presence or the essence that motivated the teaching, motivated the cause the person chooses to lead. The stop situation or the problem of the teacher and the leader is that we've reached a point where unless these octaves become central to the teaching and the leading, here is what occurs. Even if there was a communion with the essence in the beginning, the teacher, the leader, is isolated in doing himself or herself, focusing in the egoic sense about themselves as a way that becomes separated from the originating essence, and what the person, the student, then receive is not the essence and not the truth and not the originating presence, but the artist or the teacher or the leader when they are full of themselves rather than being full with something else. So that was the teacher and the leader problem. And I then added one more, which is the problem of the separated consciousness and the identification, which I saw to be the underlying element in all six, and the gap, the distance from the prospect of connected, integrated living. In the research and the work as I was developing that, this became the breakpoint. There were many other sub-cases within the bigger case, but when I got to this number 7 in consciousness, I realized that what I was actually facing was the consciousness was researching consciousness. My consciousness was researching itself in the context of the human stop situation. And I reached my stop situation, literally so. And I felt that it was, if I was not going to back off, it was becoming risky and could destabilize me. So I backed off from it, because I would always do this kind of work only when I have my feet on the ground. And mind you, I'm doing this work while I'm in the busiest time of my consulting journey. So I need to make sense when I'm with clients. And such as I'm in Helsinki now, as we described in episode 25, because I'm going to be meeting here with the leadership team in the coming day to help them develop the strategy and their organizational culture and way of being and doing and operating. So I can't be immersed in this work and not be able to make sense on Monday morning. So I had to back off from it. And in the story that we framed here, and the focus now that we offered on the study of the human predicament and its stop situations, this is the answer to the question of where was I and what was I doing before we embarked on Portals and the Universalis project. So that's why I'm proposing that the discovery and the unlocking of the Universalis prospect, in the sense that as the epoch is culminating, and as we have increasing evidence of the rise of a universal human and its development and evolutionary capacities, we have increasing evidence that the Universalis human is arising now, which is what we want to continue to develop in the next episode and the episodes to come, what occurred on the run-up to today, to doing 25 and now 26, was the need to do this appraisal of what brought us here, what brought me here, and how the bigger context for the Universalis project is that in some ways it answers the human stop situations. Now I want to be careful in the way I say this, that there is no presumption of any kind of proprietary tone in this at all. I believe there are many people all over the planet engaged with this arising. They use different names, they use different frameworks, and they bring to life and expression unique facets of this arising. And it's the recognition that the underlying cause of the underlying strata, the underlying substrate of the meta crisis is this really? This is the underlying substrate, especially number 7, the kind of human consciousness that propagates and brought to life all these problems. And so part of what we are propelled by in the Universalis project is the recognition that technology is not going to solve our way out of it. Technology can help all sorts of aspects, but technology by itself, without engaging the interior human technology, is going to be insufficient. And what the Universalis research is about the invitation to bring online the latent capacities and the new capacities that are coming online now into ripening, into maturation, into integration, to liberate these possibilities. And that's what I wanted to say in these 2 episodes. It took 2 episodes to land it here, but I now invite your thoughts and comments about this, please.
Well, I want to say that all these top situations, they are true. They're really true. But on the other hand, they present great opportunities. They present great opportunities to transcend these top situations. And yeah, for example, it's interesting that philosophy has become like more an intellectual thing, and distanced from the causes of life and the streams of life. And the same with science, with the inquiries. And I read a very nice quote yesterday, that to accept science like a dogma and think that science has all the answers actually defies the definition of science, which is about pursuing inquiries. And yeah, there's the problem of religion as well, the teacher and the student, the leadership problem, and maybe now there's the AI problem. Yesterday, my daughter graduated, and in the ceremony, there was presented a very nice video from their principal that was a dialogue. They animated it. On the one hand, it was Plato, and she was asking like Siri, the kind of robotic lady of the AI. And she was asking her, what do you think about truth? And she was answering, I'm just combining data. I cannot tell you for sure that this is truth. And then Plato was asking her how you verify knowledge. And she was saying, well, I cannot tell you, I cannot verify it. I'm just processing data. And I I'm programmed, I contain biases of the previous knowledge. So it was very, very interesting that the way they animated it, and it opened a lot of inquiries on the importance of critical thinking and the importance of the human complexity and updating, in connecting with the currents, the energetic currents that where knowledge is sourced, and not just the words or the logical acrobatics of it, or even the AI complicate integrations that contain previous biases. But yes, I feel that we are in a threshold, and all these problems, although they are very deep and we could spend days discussing each one of them, they also present opportunities. So that's what I'm staying with.
Thank you. Absolutely. Please, Karen.
Yes, can I see the previous slide again?
Here it is.
Thank you. Because the interesting thing about a stop situation is because there was something in the first place to stop. And each one of these has a propulsion that came from a search for the truth, or in the case of religion, the originating essence, or the discovery of how things work. So which is really the point Kyriaki ended on, that is the kind of what's the accolade, that the part that we really endorse is the quest, the inquiries, and it's part of the human drive. I believe it's part of our one of our aspects of the soul is to learn and to grow and to develop. So I'm seeing that as one propulsion, almost like a spiral, because then there's the other one coming the other way, because these have all reached a stop situation in terms of how you've spoken about each one. But if you go to the next slide and the integrated, the universalis work and the study of the integration, it's really looking at the originations and the powerful causes of life, and how the human works and how the universe works, coming the other way. So there's this integrating kind of spiral, and we're kind of in this middle point where it's one is coming and we're recognizing it with the permissions and the inspiration, and coming the other way, we're kind of tripping over our history that has compounded and gone in on itself. So it's a very powerful, evocative talking through these two recordings of the situation we are all in at this point in time.
Indeed, and as Kyriaki said, the problem is an opportunity. It's not just a Chinese symbol. It's that holds these two potentials. It is an actuality. What I believe we're adding up and discovering is how we've described on a number of occasions how the journey from the exoteric to the mesoteric and the esoteric at some point requires a reversal. And one of the mystery inquiries is, why is there a reversal? What's the universal anatomy as to why there is reversal? I'm not going to explain it now. That deserves a whole thing by itself. What I will say is that one entry into this mystery contemplation is that two things. We cannot carry the same tool set and the same mindset that produced the problem to the other side of the solution. Not more than we can carry all the earthly riches that we collect in this life to the afterlife. We can't. We can't. The universe is engineered to not be a process of addition, but to be a process of multiplication, actually even a process of exponential developments. And part of what produces the exponent permission is the cross. And in the cross, the addition becomes impossible, and there is a process of shedding and letting go. And so we touch on that partly with David Price Francis in the study of octave leaps and in the study of elevation. And it bears a mention here because specifically with the proposal you're both making, what is it that enables us to look at a problem and discover the opportunity in it and release the problem? Well, we have to permit a certain alchemical transformation that truly rewires who we are and how we look and engage with the landscape we're dealing with. And I sense that partly why I was compelled to bring this idea of the unexamined life admonition from Socratic and the invitation to discover in the previous recording, the esoteric way of living into an examined life, of seeing yourself as the energetic template, the tableau of the totality of the experiences that you have etched in your formation. That part of that is because we are going right now through another transition, through another octave leap. And we don't quite yet know what's on the other side. And it's when we don't know that we're called to engage in the process of appraisal with humility, with interior examination, with a readiness to leave, to let go and shed what doesn't belong and has no entry into the next octave. And I sense that we're actually in that space right now, humanity at large, and that we each find ourselves in a personal way in our own lives in an aspect or facet of it. And here together in the Universalis exploration, we've reached this point with episode 25, 26, and that is the invitation. I know I wanted to do episode 27. We will have to regather for it another day, I think, and see if we can go there and begin to prod some aspects of the next octave. But what I'm learning by being with this today is part of the process of releasing and letting go through the alchemical transition from one octave to the next involves acknowledging, seeing things for what they are, honoring what enabled you, what enabled me, what enabled us, humanity at large. If we cannot honor what brought us to this point, we will not be prepared to more fully release what this is time to release, what we must release in all these domains, in philosophy, in science, in religion, in teaching, in leading, in consciousness. In all of these, there are extraordinary achievements to embrace and carry forward we will only be able to embrace the next permissions that are opening up when we can also release what we cannot and should not try to carry forward. So that would be my closing comment. And how about that as a journey of Universalis 26?
Yes, thank you very much. And there's so much more that could be said, but it feels good to pause now. So thank you very much.
Yes, it feels a threshold moment, which is a very good place to pause. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Karen and Kiraki. The journey continues. See you soon on Universalis 27. Along with our website at portalsofperception.org, Portals is also available on YouTube and on all podcast platforms, as well as social media. You can become an active member and join the conversation in community events. And you can help us get the word out by liking this content and by sharing it with your friends.